Hello and welcome to my channel where I discuss all the ways in which I feel like an other, whether it's in society, culture, work, with my friends, whatever it is. And today I'm going to be discussing anxiety. And anxiety, I think, is such a prevalent issue in the United States, especially with the coronavirus pandemic. And for me, it's been an issue that has plagued me for most of my life. And so I think it's important for me to discuss it and hopefully destigmatize it. And maybe if any of you can relate, this will be helpful to you. I'd like to start by saying that I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional in this field in any way whatsoever. Nothing that I'm saying is meant to be advice for you, but merely a perspective on the way that I've dealt with my problems and the ways in which my anxiety presented itself, and hopefully this can help you. I'd like to discuss how anxiety has made me feel like an other and an outsider in my life, and one big way that anxiety has made me feel like an other is the fact that I am brown. I'm a Bengali girl living in Brooklyn, and in my community, the Bengali community or the Indian community, mental health issues are not something that we deal with. They're pretty taboo to discuss openly, so we just don't. And growing up, I never really discussed it. I never really dealt with it. I pretty much just tried to brush it off or shove it under the rug. And so I didn't deal with anxiety until much later in life. I did go to therapy in person several years ago, and I had a very bad experience, and I didn't want to go again. But I recently discovered BetterHelp. I'm not sponsored by BetterHelp, but I discovered BetterHelp, and it's an online therapy that's really helped me a lot. And I've been in it for several months now. I just started right before the pandemic hit, so really great timing. Start off with why I think that a lot of anxiety isn't dealt with in the brown community and how we really view anxiety. So I think for a lot of immigrants, and specifically for the brown community, anxiety is thought of to be as a good thing because it forces you to achieve, it forces you to succeed, it forces you to do well. And for me, that is exactly what happened. I was always scared that I was going to do something wrong. I was going to say something wrong. And I got pretty decent grades. I usually did pretty well at work, and I'm pretty social. I have a good amount of friends. And I'm always second guessing myself, and I'm always scared that I'm just screwing everything up. But ironically, I do pretty well in my life. It took me a long time to recognize that I have anxiety and where it came from and how it impacted me. So anxiety for me started when I was younger. I struggled to speak Bengali. I don't speak it very well. My parents came here when I was very young, and so I put a lot of emphasis on speaking English very well and assimilating into American culture. And I didn't really take my culture seriously, and so I didn't learn Bengali very well. And so at a young age, I just didn't speak it well. And a lot of the people in my community were very critical of me. And so it gave me a lot of anxiety to know that I was not speaking Bengali well enough. And so I was being judged harshly on that. And then I also felt like I wasn't American enough. So I had to try really hard to do that as well. But once I recognized that I had it, I was able to start dealing with it and then start dealing with things that caused my anxiety and things that triggered my anxiety. So a trigger for me is hoarding. Growing up pretty poor and in a small Brooklyn apartment, we had a lot of things because there was many of us. I have 5 siblings, so there was 8 of us in a small Brooklyn apartment, and we had a lot of things, and they were kind of just strewn about the entire apartment, and they weren't very organized. So as an adult, I find myself being very organized. I have very strict placement for all my things, and I don't like to have a lot of things. As you can see, I don't have a lot of things. And so for me, a big trigger can be when I'm not communicating well with people, or they're not communicating well with me, or when I am myself hoarding or seeing other people hoard. I had a really hard time letting go of a lot of items that I had in my life. I had a hard time purchasing expensive items because growing up poor, I would buy a lot of cheap things and just have them everywhere. And as an adult, I am much more mindful when I shop, and I am very considerate before I keep items in my home. I check with myself, is this something that I really need? Am I holding on to it just because I spent money on it and I don't want to throw it away, and I don't want to donate it, or whatever it is? And a lot of times that's the case. I really do struggle with that to this day, but I'm getting a lot better about it. In therapy, I discuss often how I have a hard time getting rid of certain clothing items because I feel like I might have a sentimental attachment to it, or I just feel bad. Like I feel guilty. I feel guilty for having an item and having the money now to buy nice things. And then I feel like, why am I getting rid of this? This is still nice. Or, oh, so what if it doesn't fit me? Maybe it'll fit me later. And silly things like that. I know a lot of people do that, and it is hard. It's hard to get rid of things. But I've been much more mindful about what I'm holding on to and what I'm letting into my life. Another thing that I'm also doing is understanding my anxiety and wondering, has my anxiety served me well? Why did I have it? And should I continue having this kind of anxiety moving forward? And I realized my anxiety did serve me well in many ways. I think that when you're a young immigrant in America, you're struggling to find out where you fit in. You're struggling to find out how to fit in, and anxiety keeps you on your toes. So in one way, it did serve me well because it made me constantly think. It made me wonder, am I doing this right? And so I got good grades growing up. I did well at work growing up, and I was able to make a lot of friends, and I was able to figure out a lot of things very quickly. So for me, my anxiety was beneficial when I was younger. But I find that as an adult, my anxiety sometimes can deter me. I have a hard time cleaning my apartment. I overthink a lot. Like if I have a lot of dishes, I get very anxious. I get overwhelmed very easily. So I've been realizing my anxiety did serve me well and it did have a purpose, but it may not have that purpose anymore. And so I'm trying to let it go. And one way that I found that's helpful for me is before I do any chores, I wonder first, what's the most important thing that I have to get done right now? And then I try and work on that right now. And then I tell myself, can this wait till later? If this can wait till later, I'll do it later. If it's very quick and easy, I'll just do it now. Another thing that I do is if I can't do chores because I'm too overwhelmed, I will distract myself. I think distraction is very important when you have anxiety because when you have anxiety, you're too focused. And so sometimes it's good to distract yourself. And there's a lot of ways to do it. For me, it's usually things that are sensory stimulation. So I like to have candles. And I find that for me is a nice distraction. I light a candle and it's calming, or I can light some incense and the smell can be immediately calming because my brain is now focusing on the smell of the incense as opposed to whatever I was thinking before. I have a lot of different distraction methods. And for me, having plants can be one of them. Cleaning is now something that is very distracting for me. If I have a decision that I'm having a hard time with, I'm really struggling with coming to an answer, I'll tell myself, you know what? I'm going to go do the dishes now, and then I won't think about it. And after I do the dishes, I'll come back to thinking about it, and let's see where I go. And a lot of times just having that 30 minutes of doing dishes with my hands and just working and forcing myself to be stimulated in a physical way, and then thinking afterwards, I find it to be a lot easier because my brain wasn't so focused on that question. And when you're able to relax a little bit and then go back, it's a little easier to make decisions. So I found that that's helped me a lot. Another thing is comparing myself to others. I used to really compare myself to others. And it took me a long time to realize that my experience is not like a lot of other people. And it doesn't help me to constantly look at my friends or, my coworkers and see the things that they're doing, the way that they're responding to things, because their life and their struggles are very different than my life and my struggles. And so I realized it's very important to not constantly compare yourself to others and to really focus in on yourself and what's good for you. I have a lot of friends that are very financially successful. However, their line of work is not the kind of work that I would want to do. And so it's silly for me to constantly compare myself and my financial successes or lack of successes to someone else because it's not the same and it doesn't help me in any way to constantly compare myself to other people. I think the best thing that you can do is compare yourself now to yourself in the past. You say, how have I improved my life? How have I not improved my life? How have I gone worse? How have I regressed? And when you do compare yourself to yourself in the past, you're able to really see that you are improving. And I think in a lot of ways, a lot of times we forget that we are improving. We forget that we're growing. And it's really easy to take that for granted, that we are growing, that we're improving, that we're doing better when we go through our daily lives and we don't stop to think about things. So I think that for me, being mindful and really understanding how I've changed has been really helpful for me. I think another thing that's really important is forgiving yourself. A lot of times when we're in a stressful place, we make weird decisions or we say weird things, we do weird things, and it can be really hard. It's important to understand that we're not perfect and there's nobody out there who's always making the right choices. And I think that it's really important to understand that it's okay to make the wrong choices. And a lot of times the wrong choices are things that teach us. And I feel like I used to be very critical of myself. Every time I did anything wrong, I used to be very critical, and I used to be so scared to make choices that I thought were risky because I was like, oh, this will be really harmful for me later. But I realized I made a lot of mistakes in my life, but they weren't all bad. A lot of them taught me about myself, and a lot of them helped me grow. And I think that forgiving yourself when you do something bad and letting it go and moving on is really, it really helps you just to move forward. It really helps you to keep going in life and to keep motivated to doing the things that are helpful, the things that are good for you. And it's important to know that you can't be productive all the time. You're not going to always be doing self improvement. Sometimes you just need to take some time out for a little self care. It's okay to just take an hour in a bath. It's okay that if you have dishes in the sink and you have laundry that needs to be folded, but you feel overwhelmed, it's okay to realize, you know what? This is not the time for me to do that because I can't handle it right now. It's okay to take a moment out and lay down on your bed for 5 or 10 minutes. Be mindful of what's around you, what you're feeling, and feel it. Let yourself feel it and then just move on. And I've realized that that's helped me a lot to realize that I can't be productive all the time. That I'm not going to always be doing something that's productive. Sometimes I just do things that feel good, and that's okay. I've had anxiety for a very long part of my life. I still struggle with anxiety. I haven't dealt with it all the way, but I'm much more aware of my anxiety now. And I've been dealing with it a lot better, and I find myself to be a lot happier, a lot calmer, and I find that my relationships are better because I don't feel the need to argue with everybody. I don't feel the need to constantly prove a point. And I find that I'm also a lot more empathetic with people. I find that I can recognize anxiety in others as well now when I see it. And so I have much more compassion for it. And I'm trying to have more compassion for other people when they're experiencing other mental health issues. It's hard to recognize when someone is in crisis mode or they're having a really bad anxiety attack or something like that. But when you are able to recognize it in other people and you're able to stop yourself from reacting the same way or overreacting, it makes you feel better knowing, okay, I'm calm, I can handle this. And it makes you feel even better when you can help someone else calm down a little bit as well. It's been a really hard struggle for me, and it's not something that I know that I'll be over with in a day or two. But I think that discussing it openly helps me, and I think that it'll help other people as well. I think it's really important to normalize anxiety and other mental health issues because that's what they are. They're health issues. And I think as a society, we don't discuss this and we don't discuss it openly all the time, but I think that we should. I think that people should feel okay to share how they're feeling. I think it's really important that we all discuss this and discuss this openly so that we all understand that these are all normal feelings. Everyone experiences anxiety. And sometimes we need help dealing with our anxiety, and that's okay. And I feel like that's the reason why I want to discuss all these different things that make me feel other, so that maybe somebody else will see, oh, I'm not the only one that feels this way, and maybe you'll feel a little bit better. I know that there's a lot of YouTubers out there who do discuss things like this, and it makes me feel so much better, and I'm hoping that this will make somebody else feel a little better. Please let me know if this was helpful for you. Please let me know if you relate to this. Please comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. I hope I can do more videos that are helpful like this as well, and I'm hoping to do videos about once a week, so every Wednesday most likely. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please like and subscribe so you can see more videos like this.